This is Deborah Atkinson. Welcome to the Flipping 50 show, where I address your top questions and the things you struggle with most so you can have more energy and less decision fatigue about what to eat and how to move, and you can change your thoughts so you can flip 50 and have the life and the energy you love in this second half. Today, my good friend and colleague Trish Ward, the Soulful Nutritionist, joins me today. That's a mouthful, by the way. She helps committed individuals and special needs families discover the food and lifestyle habits that work specifically for their unique biochemistry and soul journey so they can live symptom-free with abundant energy, stamina, and joy. She calls herself the Soulful Nutritionist because she firmly believes that merging soul and science is where the magic of life is. In her years of practice, she's seen time and time again that both one's physiology and psychology need to be in alignment to find true health. She offers committed individuals an opportunity to reclaim their physical health and embrace their deep connection to self and spirit. Some facts about Trish. She's one of the founding members of My Team Triumph, and that's an organization that allows disabled individuals the opportunity to experience endurance events, races through able-bodied people. She's the creator of 28 Days to Great Health, a 4-week program designed to address what she calls the dress. And this is where she and I are like soul sisters for a health success formula. So she calls that dress, it stands for diet, rest, exercise, stress reduction, and supplementation. Most importantly, Trish is mom of 3, one with special needs, and a wife to her college sweetheart. How appropriate. Hey, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is wonderful.
So appropriate. I say that to my audience. This is, as we record, you may be listening to this much later, but of course it's the day after Valentine's Day. So I love that love story.
We've been together a long time. Yes. Thank you.
Yes. And so you're so resonating. My audience gets this, especially those of you who've read You Still Got It, Girl.
Yes.
The chapters are laid out very specifically in line for Dress for Success, but I want you to share your story. So each of us usually who gets into our own space here have a personal story. So talk to me about yours.
Oh, sure. Yes. You know, I literally like to say that I kind of ran right into nutrition and health and well-being as a pun, but really actually it's the truth. When my second child was born, as you stated, he was born with special needs. And instead of grieving, I think, with the bonbons on a couch, I found a pair of running shoes and I started running. And it was how I coped with the, at the time, what seemed like insurmountable grief. And I just go out there for hours. And when you spend enough time doing something, you get kind of good at it. So I got really good at running. And I ended up becoming a competitive runner. And I had some great coaches and just really fun experiences. But I hit a wall at one point, and I went to my coaches and I said, I'm not sure what's going on, but my times are dropping. I feel like I'm dragging an elephant through sand. I can't keep this up. And they told me, hey, just eat more. Just keep eating. And I already thought, okay, I'm already eating just a ton of food and it's not working. So I ended up interviewing another coach, and I found a woman who was in her 50s, Olympic trials marathoner, just phenomenal athlete. And at our first meeting, she said, okay, so have you ever done your panels? And I looked at her and I was like, okay, panels, what panels?
What?
Yeah, like, what are you talking about? And she's like, yeah, your micronutrient panels. And I said, no, I've never done them. And she's like, Trish, you're out there for like 20 miles just sweating like you've never done your panels. Nope. So sure enough, she had me do my panels and they came back and I was completely depleted in ferritin and vitamin B and vitamin D. And it explained why I felt like I was, yeah, exactly, dragging an elephant through sand. And there it all began. My love and just real hunger for understanding how to eat for performance. And performance at the time was athletically, but then it really, really transferred over into my son, and completely changing and dialing in his food for for brain development and just development overall. So I fell in love with nutrition. I fell in love with everyone's individual nutrition, because what works for one doesn't necessarily work for another. And so I dialed in my own food and my own nutrients, and I got better. And, I haven't been without other issues. I've had some kidney stones. I've been in adrenal fatigue just as we kind of go through life. But being able to pull back and observe it and then dial it in nutritionally and with some supplements every once in a while, it sure helped me. So I literally ran right into it.
Wow. And so many women just listening, I think, can identify, and women who are not necessarily runners, not necessarily either inspired to or wanting to ever go out and run for hours, but
Sure.
They can identify with the dragging the elephant.
Oh, right? I mean, I see this all the time in my practice. Absolutely. It's just sheer exhaustion. We hit that level, and it's hard.
Yeah, definitely. And particularly, I'd like to hope that this is true, that when hormones start to change, we may have had some habits that we've ignored, signs and symptoms along the way that perhaps they weren't working. Mm-hmm. But then when you hit your 40s, and for some, maybe it's not until your 50s. And for some, they go through everything. And then it's their 60s, it hits them.
Right.
And that just says, boom, here's the wall. What you're doing is not going to be working anymore. So let's make a change.
That's it.
What if you could give our listeners 3 insights from probably the combination, right? From the combination of your personal and your professional life. What would you like them to take away from this?
Oh, wow. That's such a great question. There's so many things that we address when we look at our overall health and wellness. Diet is a big one. And in figuring out really, really what works for your biochemistry, as you stated, as the hormones kind of kick in, because our chemistry changes. Mm-hmm. That's a big thing. So, potentially doing the elimination diet or looking at food sensitivities, figuring out what your body is responding to well and eating that is a huge factor. Helps with sleep, helps with energy, just helps get rid of that brain fog. That's a big one. Can I
stop you? So mm-hmm. I'm going to interrupt you once. So let's talk about that. So and then we'll pick right up right where we left off. But on that, eating foods that make you feel good, foods that are working, this can be tricky, mm-hmm. can't it? Because sometimes the foods that might be giving us a fix mm-hmm. could actually be the foods that are making us feel not our healthy best, kind mm-hmm. of tapping our energy. It's like a drug addict.
Right.
We keep going for that food, and it does make us feel good initially. Mm-hmm. Yes. Do you see that happen quite a bit?
Absolutely. 100%. So we're going for that pre-serotonin, dopamine hit in the brain. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that, there's other signs and symptoms that we can be looking for. I really always ask people how they feel in the morning. Mm. When you wake up, do you actually feel rested? And if you really take a hard look at that, I get some real honest answers where it's like, no, not at all. How do you sleep? You don't want to wake up a lot. And that lets me know that the liver is really doing overtime, and we need to see what the burden is there. And food could be that burden, just the toxins that it's not eliminating correctly. Diet is one of those, one of those buckets that we have that takes time. Looking at diet is not a quick fix. And I think this can be really overwhelming for a lot of people, because there's a lot of wonderful cookbooks out there and, ways to eat, the paleo diet, the autoimmune protocol. There's all these different ways. But what, unfortunately, I see often are people don't dial into themselves, into what is really working for them. For example, last summer, I took myself through a low oxalate diet. I took myself off of nightshades because what was happening for me was I couldn't open a jar of pickles. I felt like my hands hurt, and autoimmunity runs in my family, and so does arthritis. So I thought, oh man, Trish, are you getting early arthritis? And, every coach needs a coach. So one of my friends who's a doctor, I was just checking in with her and she's like, have you taken any oxalates out of your food? And I said, well, no, I eat a lot of kale. I eat a lot of spinach, high oxalic acid in there.
Right.
I removed all of the oxalates and sure enough, it went away. The pain went away. So the feeling I was having where I was thinking, oh my gosh, am I getting arthritis? Completely diminished just by omitting certain foods that were not working in my biochemistry at the time. I've slowly been able to reintroduce some of them. So I think dialing in to actually listening, we kind of want this fast, rush. Am I going to get the answer? And I'll tell you, food sensitivity testing is really great for that, for the person that doesn't have time to go through and eliminate and add back in and whatnot. But it's really imperative to slow down and give yourself the time and permission that it takes to really work a good diet for your individuality.
Love that. So it's really not a one size fits all. You can't go into Barnes and Noble or Amazon and find the best-selling diet this year and say, okay, here's my answer. And flirt. I see this too. A lot of people flirting from, here's one solution. I'm going to follow this.
Right.
I'm going to do the paleo, or I'm going to do the autoimmune diet without putting your unique thumbprint on it.
That's exactly right. Because at the time too, with hormone fluctuations, we don't even know how our body's actually absorbing the food we're eating. Yeah. So that's something we really need to be aware of too. And there are signs that let us know that. Again, it's just dialing in to listening to it and then being okay with like, oh man, that doesn't work for me. Because sometimes we want things to work for us because it's easy. There's, a beautiful cookbook with all these gorgeous pictures and I want to be able to eat that food. And then sometimes it just doesn't work for us and we have to be okay with it.
That's such a great tip. Yeah. We want it to work and we want it to just give me there are a lot of us who just give me the plan.
Yes.
I'll do it. I'll do it. I have the discipline. I'll follow that. Just tell me what it is. And it's just not that easy.
That's right. I mean, that is it.
Okay. So that's kind of number one in terms of insight is see your uniqueness no matter what. And I like to use the word co-create. So when I am going through a program, if I've got a group, I tell them, I'm not handing you all the keys to the car. You're going to have to work with me and we have to kind of push and pull and try this and try that. And here's the next step. But I think the key is doing it with someone on an educated basis, like a scientific. I always refer back to 5th grade science, right? So we have to change one thing at a time.
Right.
In order to know what the thing was that affects you.
That's exactly right.
Love that. Okay. So what else?
Oh, this is a big one. Rest and stress reduction.
Oh gosh.
This is a really big domain that I see in my practice that a lot of people struggle with. And I'm raising my hand here on this side of the world saying, I've struggled with it too, but it is imperative for optimal wellness. Telling someone, when I see intakes and people write down the list of all the things they do and all their time slots are filled up in their calendar and whatnot. And you ask them, so what do you do for fun? And they're kind of just like,
what?
Yeah, what? Exactly. And it's heartbreaking. It's a reality though. We live in a very fast world and I completely understand that. There's a lot of responsibility. However, stress reduction is imperative to health. And so, one of the first things I ask people to do is pull out their calendar and put an X through 2 days during the week where they can have time to just come down off of being charged for so long. Because it's when we rest, and I know you share this with your audience often, it's when we rest is actually we're building and we're getting healthy. It's the same mentally. And I see this, this is where I say the soul and science come in because it's just as much a mental relaxation that we need as it is our physiology needs a rest. So asking people to slow down and have some fun is a big deal. One of the things I often say is, I'd like for you to walk. there's a difference between movement and exercise, and exercising is imperative. That's kind of the next thing we'll talk about. And that's what you talk about often. But just walking with a loved one or being outside for the calming effects of being in nature is humongous. So stress reduction is a big deal, huge deal in my practice. One of the hardest things actually to manipulate, to be honest with you.
Isn't it? Because it's so intangible.
It is.
I mean, okay, I can control my diet, and there's something about liking to be in control, and there's a fear that we're not in control of so many things in our lives. I think it's where eating disorders come out, but that we don't need to dive into that. But the thing is, when you're talking about rest and recovery and really taking the time, and it's funny, I had a meeting with some business colleagues yesterday. Literally, we were just talking about this. So audience, if you're listening, being an expert in coaching someone else, it does not mean we're perfect in any means ourselves. So we all kind of have our place where we get tripped up. And literally, we were all talking about this. I mean, there are 25 of us on the call, and movers and shakers, but that's the problem. Any task that you have, this was said, it's Parkinson's theory, and don't confuse that with the disease, but any task that you have will expand to the time that you allow it to be done in. So if you don't give yourself a hard stop and start, whether that's stop your work and start your relaxation, or it's start your me time, you won't get it. It won't just appear for you.
That's right.
And so for entrepreneurs, I mean, that can be really a challenge because, you work at home, and so it gets really cloudy. Am I working or am I relaxing? And danger.
Right. And I completely agree with you. We all need these reminders. I need them myself. And I always tell my clients, start small. We have this grandiose idea sometimes. And again, I'm raising my hand, where it's like, oh yeah, I got that. I know what to do. And we do, like in our brains, we do understand it, but implementing it can be a really different animal. And so I always say, look, and I'm seriously mean it, like 10 minutes a day. I think Tony Robbins said, if you don't have 10 minutes a day, you don't have a life. And that stuck with me because I was like, okay, wait a minute. I have 10 minutes. So, I implement meditation, and I'll be honest, it's been a struggle for me. I have a lot going on in this brain of mine often, but I found an app that I love. I love the Calm app. It works for me, and it makes me feel successful because I have 10 minutes. And then I think to myself, okay, if I don't have an actual 10-minute block, I have 5 minutes here and I have 5 minutes there. And so, it's progress, not perfection.
Love that. So it's literally called the Calm app?
Correct. CALM.
Perfect.
I have all my clients use it, and they really do love it. It's, like you said, you get your own little bit of control with it. You get to pick your own background music and whatever, but she'll guide you through a meditation, and it's just wonderful, and it's free.
Amazing. Okay. That'll be in the resources, everybody. So if you're walking, keep walking. If you're lifting, keep lifting. If you're driving, do not write while you're driving.
Do not write. It's going to be there.
Right. Okay. Anything else? Is there another insight that you'd say, okay, I really want your listeners to take away? So we've talked about kind of uniquifying your diet. Is that a word? It is now.
It is now.
Right. And, really identifying, carving out time for your rest. And stress.
And stress reduction.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would say exercise, and I know you hit that so well. The concept of more isn't necessarily more, and figuring out what is really going to work again for your body. It's everything we're talking about. But what goes with all of this together is just giving yourself permission to be where you are, and permission to go down this uncharted road, and knowing that you're going to have to pivot. And just piggybacking on what we're saying, it's like we kind of want this plan, and the plans are awesome, and they do help us get started, and they can be incredibly motivating. But having permission to observe the plan, to integrate the plan, that's just really, really huge, because I think sometimes we feel if we didn't nail the plan exactly how it said that day with either food or exercise or whatever, we have this guilt that just like sits on our shoulders. And sometimes that can be hard to get past. And so it's allowing ourselves and giving ourselves permission to chart down the road and pivot if we need to.
I really like that. And, I've been diving into some research recently and just looking over some studies for a new program. And I keep coming across some, results, and discussion comments that will say something like, we're talking about dropout rate or attrition rate. Mm-hmm. So they're talking about the attendance of one group versus the other, and rewarding, this group achieved a 79%, attendance rate versus this group's attendance rate was 54%. And, it was unrealistic for any of the researchers to think that 100% was where they would fall. So they were actually saying, that 79% attendance rate was phenomenal, given, there are traveling issues that come up for their subjects. There are illnesses that come up for their subjects. I mean, there's always going to be something. And I'm reminded, landing, in the stars, if you're shooting for the moon, is good. That's still great.
It is still great. It is still great. And that's the importance of community, right? So it's also imperative to find a community. And sometimes when I say that, I get this vision of, gosh, I hope people don't think that I'm saying you have to have like this huge network of people that are supporting you. It's one or two people that can hear you and be a support. And then obviously amazing memberships like you offer and other experts offer. That's huge, because then you're walking through life with people that are really kind of doing the same thing you're doing, and you can get feedback and create new friendships. I've actually made friendships in masterminds and stuff that, you're there for maybe a business tool or whatnot, and you end up walking away with just some amazing friends. So it's imperative to have a community that is like-minded, and that shifts as we age. It does.
So true. So true. And it's sometimes not even age related, but it's, where you are in life. I can look at, many of you listeners out there may actually be similar to me, and you've got, kids in college or, about to graduate from college, young marrieds, but some have 5-year-olds.
Yes.
Right? I mean, we're just very different. And so in talking to people who are living your life, you may be talking to somebody who's 30, you may be talking to somebody who's 60.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, my friends we run the span of age, and it's a soul connection. Age is kind of just the number.
Yeah. Very cool. Love that about community. I do think that is so important, because I like to talk about, swimming upstream. If you're trying to make a change yourself, you already have a little resistance internally about change, even if it's a positive one. Yes. We don't admit sometimes that our comfort zone really isn't all that comfortable, but change is much less comfortable, right?
Yes.
So it's hard. And if you have people in your direct and immediate, maybe family or friendship or work circles, people you see all the time, who contribute to that resistance, you've really got to find some people that kind of scoop you up.
Yes.
And are willing to say, you and I talked about this in the green room, everybody, before we came on the air, that, we admit, it wasn't going really well.
Right.
And so it's not all about, oh, great job, great job. It's sometimes, I had a really bad day today. I fell off the bandwagon. And being able to admit that without anybody saying, well, I told you so,
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm so grateful for that. So thank you. And it goes back to that permission piece. We don't have to walk around with this front like everything's always okay, because it's not.
Yeah.
And change does stir that up for us, even if it's good change. I mean, change is scary. Yeah. And it works that frontal lobe of our brain. I call it the critter brain, where just, the critic comes out and it's like, oh, you can't do this. You're not going to be able to do it. You're not going to be able to stick, and we have to set that aside. Yeah, exactly. Right. Exactly. And sometimes it's that community that's going to lift you back on top, because, we aren't designed as humans to do this all alone. And man, that elephant can get pretty hard on that back if we think we can. So I always appreciate people's vulnerability. And I realize, as I move down this number line, and this just comes with evolution, with aging and just my soul journey, is that being vulnerable is really where it's at. That's who I want to attract in my life. That's who I want in my life. Not everything is peaches and cream. It's just not that way.
Right.
So I'm grateful for those people that are honest.
Yeah, love that too. And you and I have a mutual friend, Joan Rosenberg. So Dr. Joan Rosenberg, and look that up. She's got a TED Talk, and I'll put this in the show notes, but she talks about working through emotions. I mean, the reality that we are going to feel anger and sadness and, shame and guilt and all of it. And we've got to really let those emotions come through. We don't have to put on a happy face. Right. I mean, it's okay to say, I'm sad. And, I think sometimes, Trish, you've had it, right, in your life.
Oh, yeah.
And, I've recently had it in mine. We had a huge loss this past summer. And, when you actually experience it and you begin to talk to other people and you realize what amazing people you're surrounded with who also have a story, a tragedy, a major loss. And yet, you would never know if you didn't know them. I mean, it does tell you, another friend of ours, right, JJ Virgin, is going through the miracle mindset right now, and you are stronger than you think. We all have that, and being able to, be real with people, that's really the key. That's when you're surrounded by people who are going to take you the journey.
Absolutely. And the human spirit is so resilient. It is so resilient. And we get, I think I wish I could say I was a stranger to tragedy and grief, and I'm not, just like everybody listening. And you will persevere. It doesn't feel like it, but it's the same reason as to why I get up and I choose healthy food and I choose to move my body and I choose, even though I fight with myself sometimes, with the meditation and whatnot, because really for me, it's a gateway to self-worth, self-confidence, and just being better so I can get my message out into the world. It's a tool. Those are tools I use to be better for my family and better for this world. And so when people, when you start out in a program or a new regime, it's always people say, what's your why and why are you doing this? And what I realized when people would ask me that, I'd get a little like, oh gosh, it's always my family. But when you go and dig deeper into that layer, I became very okay with, okay, this is my starting why. And of course, it's always my 3 children. I live for them. And then when I get into my personal self, it's for what I just shared. It's, for confidence, for self-worth, because I'm worth it. And it's a way of self-loving myself. I don't come from a family that has, my family showed love in a wonderful way, but it wasn't touchy-feely or anything like that. And so I see healthcare and movement and all of that as a real sign of self-love. And that makes me better for everybody else. And then I can be more vulnerable in my practice with my clients, with my friends and colleagues, because I'm taking care of myself.
Yeah, I love that. And so who better to learn from? So I'm going to go back just and read a little bit of your bio for everybody listening. So Trish is the mom of 3. Now, you're hearing this from a mom of 1. I had an older stepson, but I sometimes had a hard time getting out the door in the morning. So imagining someone with 3, I was like, oh my gosh, you should be ashamed of yourself. I was like, how do these people get dressed and shower and how do they do it?
Well, let's be honest, it's not always pretty, but we do.
Trish is the mom of 3 and one with his special needs. And of course, having a spouse, which both makes it harder and easier, I think, at the same time when you, look at, yes, you're doing it with a partner, but that partner needs attention too. So
yes,
let's dive in here. Trish, I mean, what are your top 2 favorite ways people can start taking better care of themselves today, and doing some real true self-care for boosting their overall health based on, what do you do?
Absolutely. Oh, wow. You know what? I'm a nature lover. And so I always suggest to listeners, clients to get outside. Now, I know in California here, we're going to hit some rain, but getting outside and sinking my feet into the earth and walking the earth and running the earth is it's like prayer for me, really. It is such a spiritual time. I love knowing that I'm actually just a little speck on this planet, and being outside lets me know that. Using different senses, seeing birds and eagles fly and whatnot is huge. So I really recommend, even for people that kind of maybe struggle with being outside, you don't need to hike, but go for a walk. I have literally asked clients before, especially when they work from home, to every 50 minutes, set the timer on your iPhone, have it go off, and get up and walk around the block. One client comes to mind, and we were working with some anxiety and depression, and he did that, and he would get up and he'd walk around and he felt better. And just shifting the environment and then being outside, it does something to you. And I will tell you, that is my favorite way to take care of myself. It's a busy household here, so taking care of myself isn't always easy, but I literally have to schedule it in. My other favorite way is taking an Epsom salt bath. And I can't always do it for 20 to 25 minutes, which I would love, but sometimes I can do it for 7, and it's enough, because the magnesium that's in there helps me not only detox, but helps me sleep really well at night. And it's not a shower. I mean, I love showers, but a bath, it's like you just kind of sit there. You have to just kind of relax. And those are simple ways, because I would love to say, oh yeah, I can go get a massage every month, or actually every week, and I can go do that. But there are days and weeks I just can't. And that time commitment is a little bit more challenging, but I can take a bath and I can get outside. I do have those 10 minutes every day. And so it makes me feel successful, because I know for the listeners that take care of children or grandchildren or whatnot, sometimes it really does feel like you don't have extra time in a day, but we have 10 minutes. And that's why I always go back to start small.
Love that. And I'm right there with you. And an Epsom salt bath just has been my go-to in the evening. I love it.
Yes.
Super simple, but it's like heaven. If I've missed for a few days and then it's like, why don't I do this?
I know. Oh my gosh, I know. One other ritual that I have been doing for a while, and I suggest to my clients as well, is I got into this whole ritualistic thing of having a cup of tea at night. And I love Pinterest. Social media in general isn't, there's all different kind of feedback we get from social media. But Pinterest is a time for me to just dream. I love looking at kitchens that I want, because I love cooking and being in the kitchen. And, it just allows that dream state, that thinking big and just getting into a very different chemical space where we are relaxed. So that's kind of another easy thing that we can do. It could be a magazine for someone. It could be just a conversation with a partner that you haven't seen all day. But slowing down, and for some reason, even my kids now will say like, "Hey mom, can you make me a cup of tea?" It's just become like the nighttime wind down. And it's really nice. It's simple. It's doable. I can actually do it and feel like, yay, see, I'm doing something. This is good.
I love that. And there's so much to be said for that routine. Like if you've conditioned your kids to that, definitely, you've got a routine going on. Yes. Love that. Okay. So first of all, 2 questions left. One is, where can listeners get more Trish?
Yay. Wonderful. They can find me on my website, which is www.trishmward.com. That's trishmward.com. They can find me on Facebook at Trish M Ward. Yes, Trish M Ward. Same with Twitter and Instagram. It's all Trish M Ward.
I'm afraid we're going to have to ask what the M is for.
Sure. It's actually my maiden name, Moran.
Okay. All right.
And it's funny, because when I went to, when I rebranded and I went to my name, Trish Ward was taken. She's a realtor. And I thought, oh, darn. So I added the M.
Very cool. Okay. So at the end, this is your quiz time. I always ask, is there a question that I wish, or that you wish I would have asked you?
Gosh, you know what? No, this has been so lovely. I love that you ask about the story. I think that's imperative for people to just know that we too are human, and we are on a journey, and we were every day, constantly trying to better ourselves, just like everybody out there. So I appreciate you asking.
Fantastic. So listeners, if you have a question that I haven't asked Trish, or you have a question for me, please leave it below the show link at flipping50.com, all spelled out, no numbers, and join us on the Facebook fan page at Flipping 50 TV. If you enjoyed the show, please leave a rating in iTunes. It really helps us. And then share this with a friend to really help you, and surround yourself with a supportive community of women who are on the same journey. What are you waiting for? Start Flipping 50 today.